Find your way, the world's unknown. Look ahead, don't be scared. I'll be there. Oh, I'll be there through the fire, winds and waves.
This idea of I'll be there.
I'll be there.
That's what the blessed assurance is of this idea of invisible grace. This trust, this knowing that grace is available all the time. Now this is what I've discovered about my own journey. When we're real clear, when everything's moving right along, it's easy to open to grace, yes? But when things are difficult, when we're in great pain, when things are just very, very hard to accept or extremely devastating in our walk in the world, opening to the presence of grace and then knowing, oh, there it is, I'll be there, doesn't work so much. I was having a discussion this morning before service with someone who's going through a very difficult time. And this person said to me, I thought I knew it all, I've studied, I've learned all these things, I thought I knew a lot of stuff, and you know what? This experience that I'm going through right now, it's hard. It's hard. I'm not finding the grace in this. It's not finding the support that I need. This is just really hard. And I said, well, you know what? That's why we call it spiritual practice and not spiritualizing all done. Because when we're in pain and things are icky, it's very difficult to open up and put our sails up for the winds of grace to float our boat. Isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth? To open to this something more, whatever this something more is. You can call it what you want. I like the word grace. There's something more that sustains us in spite of our fear, in spite of our pain, in spite of the circumstances that we're going through in that moment. There's something more. I picked this image because Eric Butterworth, one of my very favorite metaphysical teachers, he says that this thing called grace is like being in a house with every window and every door tightly closed, and still there's enough air leaking around the windows and doors so that we get enough oxygen to survive. And this is grace. This is grace. When we think there's not enough to survive, this is what grace is. It's that sense that we're being held, that we're being cared for, that there's this energy of the universe is here for us in every need, all the time, this blessed assurance, this activity of God working through whatever that thing is, no matter what. Does it always look the way we want it to look? Matter of fact, maybe it rarely looks the way we want it to look. But it's always working. It's constantly working. And guess what? Grace is not dependent on anything. We don't even have to ask for it. It's just there. It's this invisible something. You can't see it. You can't touch it. You can't grab it. And you know what? You can't really effectively describe it. It's this incredible energy from the universe that's all around us. It's within us. It's moving through us. It's moving through everything that's going on in our experience of life. That we're not having to do this thing on our own. When I say on our own, what I mean is our small human ego self. That there is this bigger aspect of our life experience that's moving us along, that's supporting us, that's guiding us, that's carrying us, that's holding us in our experience. No matter what, that we know that we have something going for us that's beneficial and it's working in our favor. That it's supporting not only us, but all of us, everything. Grace simply is. It just is. It just is. It is a gift in life. It is a gift of the universe to us. Grace and God are one in the same. Grace and God are one in the same. How do we get grace? How do we get grace? Well, contrary to what some religions tell us, we don't have to do anything. We do not have to deserve grace. We do not have to be pardoned. We don't have to earn it. It just is. And I love what Eric Butterworth says about that. He says, you don't have to earn grace. Grace is simply an explanation of a wonderful facet of the activity of God. It's not something to work for. It's not something to develop. It simply is. It is an assurance, an explanation of why things are never quite as hopeless and why things are never quite as dire and why we never quite receive the full harvest of the errors that we sow and why we always receive a little more good than we give. Something of the infinite is always filtering through and becoming part of our consciousness. It's not a special act of God. It's not just for one person, but it is the good pleasure of the divine for this grace to come to all of us, every person, every being. This idea that it is in us, all around us, and it's equal for all of us. We all get the same amount of grace. It's just that, like Linda says, we got to put up ourselves. How does it work? Well, what I know is it's all about timing. It's all about recognizing. Because in my life, grace has always come without my asking for it. It just shows up. It shows up when I need it. You know how that works? I was thinking about my father's experience with hospice. And sometimes grace is fierce. Have you noticed how that works? Sometimes grace is fierce. When my father was in hospice, it was a difficult time. But there were some aspects of that experience that were supported by grace. And one of the things that happened during that time was we had a healthcare system that was personalized. It wasn't, it's been many years now, it wasn't this big sort of impersonal healthcare system where the doctor barely knows the patients. The doctors knew my father, they knew his condition, they were readily available by telephone, they were willing to work with the family in hospice to make him comfortable. And my mother always says, this is where the grace is. I'm glad that your father was sick when he was, because it would be a different story today. Do you see how the fierce grace works in this? Do we want to have somebody die in a situation? No. But it was optimal, and when we look back, we see the grace of that. Now, did we know the healthcare system would really shift and things could be very different, 20 years down the road? Well, we didn't know that. But at the time, he was being helped. He was being cared for in that situation in a way that was very filled with grace. See, grace doesn't do it for us. Grace is just there, and it gives us an opportunity to step in and do our part, to raise our sails. We get to step in where grace wants us to go, so that when we show up, we suit up, we do our part, we step up to that experience. And what I know, and this is especially true on Mother's Day, it's true for me. I don't know if it's true for you if you're a mom, but this is true for me. Every single moment as a mother is a moment of grace. And you know why? I don't know how to do this. I did not know how to do this in the beginning, and I'm still not sure how to do it today. Does anybody recognize that? Same thing with being a human being. Every moment, every breath is a new opportunity to suit up, show up, and step up, and open to grace in that experience. And when something new pops up, I get to open to the activity of the divine in that experience, which I believe is grace, and say, show me how this works. Show me how to do this. Show me how to move through this experience. I'm feeling real closed in now, like that house. But guess what? When I know that there is the blessed assurance of grace within these experiences, I recognize that I'm not going to suffocate within the experience. There's going to be enough oxygen for me to survive whatever that thing is. And sometimes it doesn't look very good. We've got addictions, we've got relationship issues, we've got financial things, we've got stuff, yeah? Anybody not have any of those things going on? Yeah. See, what I know about grace is it makes the world a whole lot less scary. when we're going through these extremely difficult times in our lives, when people that we love are suffering, when people that we love are distant from us, when people that we love are having a hard time, when we're having a hard time, when we know that grace is in the process, it makes it a lot less scary. Because we don't have to face life all by ourselves with our little human ego self. We get to rely on that energy of the divine. It feels really good to know that we're being held and cared for, doesn't it? It soothes the fear of what life might bring to us next. We never know, do we? It's pretty much uninvited in my case. We never know what the next thing's going to be. But when we're able to step back and look at, like Glenn said, we look at the patterns of our life and we go, you know what? I can see the activity of grace in all these areas in my life. At the time, it didn't feel so good. Today, I think about you, Mike. Mike came to Common Ground at the invitation of Cordell. And Cordell's no longer living. But Mike came as a guest of Cordell, and he came because, why did you come? Because his beautiful wife, Sandy, he thought needed a spiritual community. And so Mike shows up at the invitation of Cordell, and Sandy now starts to come to Common Ground. Right, Mike? And then, as life would be, Sandy also made her transition. So Cordell is gone, and Sandy's gone, and this is the grace. Mike's acceptance of the invitation from Cordell and his desire to be beneficial presence for his wife, Sandy, has given him spiritual community at Common Ground, a whole community, and it's given Common Ground a beautiful example of grace in the world. That's true, Mike. It was grace that you found us. And at the time of all of these losses and these things, it didn't feel like that. But today, the fact that Mike is part of our community is grace to all of us and to Mike. Is that right, Mike? Yes, I know it is. And so this is how it works. Sometimes it's fierce and it's painful. But it has a way of working itself out so that we're not alone. It gives us courage to carry on, to persevere. This idea. So grace is this invisible something. Who knows what it is? I don't. But I know it's real. I know it's as real as anything in the world. It's this special assistance. We don't have to earn it. We don't have to know what it's all about. We don't have to plan it. We just have to open to it, show up, suit up, step up, raise the sails, as Linda said. Because no matter what's going on, there is something that is working in our favor, that's holding us, that's carrying us, that's moving us along. It's unbidden, and it's a gift of life. And guess what? We get to decide how we respond to grace. We get to decide how we step into whatever opportunities life shows us, like Linda said. Whether we open the bag of gold that sun comes down from heaven, or whether we trip over it. This is our choice. We get to choose how we experience grace in our lives. Thank you for listening. So I help you